Good morning. Today, as we look at the New Testament, we're going to finish reading John chapter 21, and then we'll look at Acts 1, yesterday and today's readings. The final chapter of John's Gospel, it begins with, it says, after these things, Jesus showed himself to the disciples again, and it lists 7 disciples, not all of them by name, but it's got, Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathaniel, the sons of Zebedee, that's James and John, and then 2 others, so there were 7 of them. And Simon Peter says, I'm going to go fishing. And these other 6 go with him in the boat. And it says they went out in the boat that night, they caught nothing. Just after daybreak, Jesus was on the beach. The disciples didn't realize who was there. We know this story, I'm sure you do. Jesus says to them, he says, children, you have no fish. That's according to the New Revised Standard. Other may say a different word there, but he makes a statement, you have no fish, and then the question, have you? I mean, so it's he's stating a fact and then asking the question, and they respond, no. And he says, cast the net on the other side of the boat. And they do that, and there are so many fish in there that these 7 men can't lift the net back into the boat. This was a common practice of net fishing, and why they would even really throw the net in on the right-hand side of the boat, some person's suggestion from the shore when they've been trying, I would guess, everything all night. They haven't been fishing just from the left side of the boat. They've tried left, right, front, back, who knows? But they've been trying. But they do this as this person on the shore says, and they can't bring the fish in. And it is then that, somebody says it's the Lord. John, this is, James and John as the disciple Jesus loved. It's the Lord. And Peter gets excited and starts swimming for shore. The rest of them come with the boat, dragging the net full of fish. And when they got there, they find a charcoal fire. And, they didn't have charcoal briquettes like we do today. So to have a charcoal fire means that you were there for a while, burning the wood, letting the wood flame, and then the flames die down, so you've got just the charcoals left. And that's the best fire for cooking over, whether it's marshmallows for a s'more or whatever you're going to cook. The best fire to cook over are the coals, the charcoal fire, because of the fewer flare-ups. And there was fish and bread there. Some of us know how long it takes to bake bread. You get it all done and you get it all mixed up, and it's about a half an hour in the oven. So the preparation has been going on for a while. And the fish and the bread are ready, and Jesus invites them to bring some of the fish that they caught, but he's already got some that's ready to eat. And he feeds them. And then such an important part comes up next, that Jesus restores Peter. This Peter, brash and bold, who said, I'll never deny you, who does then deny Jesus 3 times and must have felt crushed, just continually crushed. And John tells us this is the 3rd time that Jesus has appeared to his disciples, in the upper room when Thomas wasn't there, upper room when Thomas was there, and now on the shore of the sea. And he restores Peter. He says, Peter, do you love me? You know I love you. Feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? You know I love you, Lord. Tend my lambs. Peter, do you love me? The 3rd time, Peter, you got to be crushed. Do you love me? Well, yeah, I love you. And then the 3rd time again, Jesus says, feed my sheep. So the 3 denials, the 3 appearances of Jesus so far to his disciples, the restoration of Peter, the 3rd time again is just, erasing the 3 denials. And it's, Peter professes the love for Jesus. And we may look at that a little bit and wonder about for us. How many times have we betrayed Jesus? And how many times does Jesus ask, Russ, do you love me? And my response is, I love you, Lord. But you know that I can't follow your will. You know that I can't always do the right thing. You know that I fail. And Jesus asks each and every day, Russ, do you love me? And my response is, I love you, Lord. Feed my lambs, tend my sheep. Know that you're loved, know that you're forgiven, know that you are restored. This story of the restoration of Peter is so important for each and every one of us. And we sometimes can look at it and think it's just about Peter, but it's not. It's about you and me, and it's about everybody in the world. Because we continually to deny, we continue to sin, we continue to walk away, we continue to let Jesus down. Yet Jesus gives us another chance and another chance and another chance. Jesus and God, the God of another chance, always another chance. And Peter asks Jesus about John, and John says, Jesus says, don't worry about what's going to happen to John. I'm going to take care of you. What happens to John isn't your concern. And I think that's a lesson for us as well. I mean, we need to be concerned that we share the word of Jesus with others, but we can't take on responsibility for them. We can't worry too much about them, but we share with them the message of God. And, to wonder, I mean, is he going to have a greater reward in heaven, or is he going to have a longer life, or is he going to be richer, or is he going to be more famous, or, Jesus says, no, don't compare yourselves to others. Worry about your relationship with me. And that's enough. And the last thing in the Gospel of John, verse 25, it says, these are written, but these are also many things that Jesus did. There are many other things. Every one of them written down, I suppose the whole world could hardly contain the books that would be written. And it's kind of an echo that, in chapter 20 on Saturday, I mentioned, the last verse, Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples. But these are written that you may know and believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God. And again, so the end of this chapter, the end of the book, is a reminder that Jesus did much more, many more things than the Gospels have told us. So now to move on to Acts. Acts is the second book of Luke, the Gospel of Luke, and then the Acts of the Apostles. Yeah, and we just abbreviate it to Acts so often, but it tells about the lives and the stories and the ministries of these early disciples. And verse 1, it says, in the first book, Theophilus, I wrote down things about Jesus that I taught from the beginning. And, if you look back at Luke 1 through 4, he says, many others have sat down to write an account of Jesus. I'm setting down an orderly account. This is the purpose of Luke. He wrote an orderly account of Jesus' life and ministry, and now he's sharing with us an orderly account of the ministry and of the disciples immediately following the resurrection of Jesus. And he goes on and he says, that everything that Jesus had taught from the beginning until he was taken up through the Holy Spirit. After his suffering, he presented them by many convincing proofs. And then when they're all together, in verse 6, they ask him, when is the time that you will restore the kingdom of Israel? And Jesus says, it's not for you to know, but because God has got that set. And verse 8 is one I've got underlined and highlighted. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. And you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. And in the margin of my Bible, I says, to my hometown, to where I live now. And this is one of the reasons, this verse is one of the reasons that I like in the Apostles' Creed when we give power to the Holy Spirit. And so often, that he was conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit, and he's conceived by the Holy Spirit. Well, yeah, but I think it's important to realize the power that God has, the power that Jesus has, the power that the Holy Spirit has. And so we will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon us. And as Lutheran Christians, especially, most Christians with the baptism believe that in our baptism, God becomes a part of us. The Holy Spirit comes. We have been sealed with the cross of Christ and marked with the cross of Christ and sealed with the power of the Holy Spirit. And so in our baptism, this Holy Spirit comes. So we too receive this power of the Holy Spirit. And after Jesus says this to the disciples, then he is lifted up and the cloud takes him out of their sight. And then two angels come and talk to these disciples. And the disciples then returned to Jerusalem. It says it was a Sabbath day's journey away, which a Sabbath day's journey isn't very far because of the religious traditions and laws. They couldn't travel very far. So they went from the Mount of Olivet, which is near Jerusalem. They returned to Jerusalem that way. And they went back to this upper room where they had been so many different times. And it lists the 11 disciples that are left. Judas, of course, is gone, no longer with them. And it says all of these were constantly devoting themselves to prayer, along with certain women, including Mary, the mother of Jesus, as well as his brothers. So remember that, at one point in time, Mary, Jesus' mother and brothers came, looking for Jesus, because everybody was saying he was out of his mind. You got to do something about him. But here Mary and Jesus' brothers are devoting themselves to prayer and to Jesus' continued ministry. And then Peter stands up and talks about how all of these things happened and how Jesus had fulfilled some prophecies and so much going on. And then he also points out that, Jesus chose 12 and we're one short. So we need to fill that spot. And there were two men that were thought about for that spot. Joseph, called Barsabbas, who was also known as Justus, and also Matthias, however you want to say it. Says they prayed, and they prayed this way: Lord, you know everyone's heart. Show us which one of these two you have chosen to take the place that Judas has turned aside. Show us which one you have chosen. So they're asking for Jesus' guidance, for God's guidance on choosing this 12th disciple. And then they cast lots, and the lot falls upon Matthias, whichever way you want to say it. And so he becomes disciple number 12. And that's where we end in chapter 1, that, he was added to the 11. So they have the complete unit of 12 again. And, the numbers 7 and 12 have some significance. There were 7 days of, in the week, 7 days of creation. There were 12 tribes of Israel. Numbers are, we see a lot of similarities in numbers. 40 days comes up, the 50 days comes up, and different things that way. But the disciples, again, are complete with 12. And we are complete with Jesus in our lives. So may you have a blessed day by God.